Any concept I talk about with you guys, whether it has to do with Islam, relationships, life, like anything, the one thing that's always in the back of my head that I haven't explained yet is frequencies. And I was thinking about this because this was something I was adding into the book that I'm writing. But it has to do with how everything is a frequency, okay? And this isn't some like mumbo jumbo, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's not shit, it's not this, it's facts. Like, everything is a frequency. Everything in this life follows a wave pattern, whether it's our thoughts, our feelings, whether it's like this piece of clothing, like everything has a wave pattern. Nothing is actually, like, scientifically, nothing is actually what it seems. Me touching this is not necessarily like just me touching it. It's my neurons thinking, feeling the sense of touching it. It's just this whole object, like this pen, is just atoms vibrating against each other. And my fingers, this touch, it's not really touching. Touch is kind of like a man-made thing. Scientifically, it's just atoms vibrating against each other. And touch never really actually happens because the physical world is not actually as real as it is. It's just a figment of our like eyes and imagination and what like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us, like the blessing of being able to experience a physical world. Like, just think about it. When you hear music, can you see music? This is just like an example, just so that you can kind of understand what I mean. Like, what do you mean we don't touch? You hear the music, you hear it, you feel it almost like in your body, right? Because you can hear music. But that doesn't mean that you can see the vibrations or the touch of it traveling to you. The music speaker is right here, but you can somehow hear it, right? That's your senses. That's your neurons that are vibrating. There's a wave right here that we can't see that the sound wave is traveling on. There's a wave right here in between my fingers that's traveling right there. Even though it looks like they're touching, it looks like they're clasping against each other, there's a wave there that's helping us, that's making our brain think, oh, it's touching, oh, it's hearing, oh, we're seeing. Just like it, we don't have to put like this piece of clothing on my eyeball for me to see it. It's a wave traveling. So there's just different wavelengths on everything. So just think about it like that. Every wave pattern carries a different frequency, okay? So for example, wave 3 right here is a higher frequency. There's going to be more oscillations. An oscillation is basically how quickly it goes from tro to the peak. So there's more oscillations. A lower frequency is something like this, where it's just kind of like a little slower. You don't see as many oscillations. The higher your frequency is, and now we're talking about emotion, because every emotion carries a different frequency, and we know that because 1, it's scientifically proven, and then 2, we feel it. Like, we are our own evidence. Like, we feel the differences in peace and love versus guilt and shame. Like, we genuinely feel something in our souls that's different between these feelings. And that's why I always say, and that's why all these like gurus and like change your life gurus on TikTok and stuff, and I don't say that to try to like minimize them or patronize them or anything, but that's why they just spit so much stuff at you about how like, okay, you can change your life if you just start manifesting it, if you just think differently. I'm not telling you like, oh, this is how you change your life. I'm just explaining that frequencies make a big difference, and it has to do with every concept that I talk about when it comes to Islam. So when I talk about frequencies, I'm going to explain it in terms of like our inner world and like how that has to do with like your outer world and stuff. But I'm also going to tie it into kind of like how relationships are and just kind of navigating what it feels like in like your relationships that you have in your everyday life. So you're not gonna start, this is like a little emotional chart that I think explains it pretty well. It has like the lowest frequencies here: shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, and it goes all the way up to the top ones, which is like enlightenment, all the way at the top. And I'm gonna touch on the fear one a little bit, because I know I always push in every video like the only way to live a real life is like fearing Allah, and you would think like, oh, but fear is down there. Fear and fearing Allah are two different feelings. So this whole chart is almost kind of like a ladder. You can't go from one to the other, like jumping up. Like, you have to pass each step before you can get all the way to the top. Having a relationship with Allah, you can't have like a real relationship with Him or try to increase your knowledge or increase your iman or anything like that if you're stuck down here. And a lot of us are stuck down here. And a lot of the way the world works is keeping us here. Because if we get up here, then we realize the power that we have, and then we kind of become very unstoppable people. Like, just think about it. a lot of the way the Muslim world operates is on guilt and shame. It's really just about making you feel bad and making you feel guilty that you're not a good person, you're not doing this or you're not doing that. That's literally like the worst thing you could possibly feel. Like, put this whole chart aside. I don't even care about this chart. It's just so that I can explain with a visual to you guys like how terrible it is to operate off of guilt and shame. Like, remember when I was explaining like hijab and stuff? Like, you're supposed to wear hijab for the sake of Allah, of a feeling that only comes all the way up here. You can't do it because, oh, I'm ashamed of what other people will think of me. I would feel guilty if I didn't do it, this and that. If you do it and operate in those levels, you'll never feel the true enlightenment of what it feels to be like a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, and some people really only get as far as fear. Like, when you're supposed to fear Allah, it's not supposed to be subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're not supposed to fear him in a way that you're scared of him. You're supposed to fear him in a way that he's the creator. Like, he is subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is the most everything. Like, you are supposed to fear him in a way where it's like you don't fear anything else in this world except for him. You don't fear other people's judgments. You don't fear what other people have to say about you. You don't fear what anything else could possibly happen in this world except for what will happen on your day of judgment. But I think a lot of people get mixed up with what the fear of this world is versus the fear of Allah, and they kind of are lying to themselves about the way they operate because they're not being as self-aware and accepting of like who they are and why they're operating the way they do, right? So that comes with a lot of pride, because if you operate out of fear of like things that are not having to do with Allah, you're going to be holding a lot of pride, and you're going to be holding a lot of like making sure your image is right, and that all stems from pride. So once you have the courage and the bravery to be like, you know what, I'm going to lead my own path, I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm not going to care what anybody thinks of you, you're going to be a little bit more neutral. You're going to be a little bit more like, okay, like a little more level-headed, a little bit more like confident, a little bit, energy becomes very positive, and you're beginning to have inner confidence. Like, you're not thinking about what the outside world has to do with you, you're thinking about yourself and how you feel. So then you start having like a willingness, like you're like more open to things, you're more open to learning new things and changing certain things and just like changing the inner workings of your head. Then you start to accept that, okay, I was one way and I want to be another. Like, you really just start to accept where you're at and where you want to be, and you see that road in between who you are and your highest self, right? So then you have a little bit more reason, you start to make a little bit more sense, the reasonings you're giving yourself and the world around you are starting to make more sense. And then once you are able to have that level of self-awareness, you can experience things like love, peace, and joy. Enlightenment is really high up, but like love, peace, and joy, like you can experience what true love feels like, and not just romantically, but just what it feels like to love. You can feel actual joy. You don't feel like this mundaneness to life. You don't feel like this, like, why am I living? There's so many good Muslims out here who they're like, well, why am I living anyway? You know, like, what's the point of this? Well, look at what's happening in Palestine. Look at what's happening in all these countries. What is the point? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so easy to get bogged down and get back into these frequencies. And just because you get to a certain frequency doesn't mean that you can't drop back down. Like, their frequencies are always moving. If you're not always keeping yourself in a certain frequency, you're going to naturally like drop back down to the frequencies around you, because whatever is happening around you, if you are not the one in your own life controlling it and like making the decisions to have different frequencies and different thoughts and feelings, and like I've explained in my other videos, thoughts and feelings carry frequencies. So if your thoughts aren't a certain way and you're not feeling those thoughts, like you're not like actually like believing the thoughts that you're feeling, then you're not gonna tap into that frequency. It's an electromagnetic field, electric thoughts and magnetic feelings. You're not going to be able to tap into a reality on this life that has, because this world is an electromagnetic field, right? Like the earth itself has it. So if you don't tap in electromagnetically, then you're not going to be able to understand, like tap into a certain reality. And sometimes, honestly, like, you have to put yourself down to these frequencies. Like, you're not supposed to avoid these. You're supposed to just know that you can control it. Like, you sometimes should get down to these feelings because that's natural life. But you have to be self-aware that you're doing it and you're not letting it be done to you. You know what I'm saying? I hope I explained that well. And I'm probably going to explain it more in another video.